All right, looks like we're live, hopefully. Mostly, partially, to some extent. Wait for the video to play.
Mostly,
yes,
partially.
there we go. Sounds adequate enough. So, just overview stuff, I think. Upcoming videos, maybe something like that, what I'm going to be trying to do. Besides the experiments I want to try to fiddle with and stuff like that. So if you have any questions or comments, attempt to put them in some kind of polite English and such. So anyway, I watched the Hilster News Friday thing, and it's a little tedious. But anyway, there was mention of this old video by his father, a couple of years old anyway, on relativity. And it's just funny. It's the whole argument about which way the light goes, whether it jumps to the future or whether, in fact, if you could make a light clock, it would just be a speedometer. It would essentially tell you exactly how fast you're going based on how much the light goes backwards, in the sense that the light moves in a straight line at a constant speed, regardless of circumstances. That's what light does. And there's no evidence or real cause to think that somehow, because you're moving and you had a gun, if I had a gun on the table and I'm moving, there's no reason to think the gun just spins to a new direction. So when I fire a bullet, it's coming out the wrong way. No reason to think that. No evidence. So why should I assume that photons admitted perpendicular to a surface can't be admitted perpendicular to a surface? Of course they can be. And they would be. Aiming doesn't change. So anyway, so it's the same exact relativity argument that I voiced over so many times. So it's just kind of obviously there's a bunch of people through, out of the 7 billion on Earth. And it's unfortunate that the internet doesn't provide a really good mechanism for putting all of this stuff in one bucket somewhere where you can just, see all of these people who have drawn the same conclusion that there's no reason to think light jumps to the future and takes a longer time to travel a longer distance because it's now aimed at the future, where when it goes backwards, it takes exactly the right amount of time because the light itself doesn't actually go backwards. The spaceship moves away from it. The light does exactly what it does straight. It travels a straight line, the little photons. And there is no longer distance. There's no need for, Einstein theories to transform those distances into some notion we have to break time, to somehow keep the speed of light consistent. But anyway, just interesting that it's pretty much exactly the same argument I made. Anyway, just in a different form. The other thing was, well, I did, the Bill Gates guy did leave a comment, and I did watch another one of his videos, but maybe I'll stop doing that. It was just, the history of ether, and that's terribly unimportant to me. Obviously, history made lots of mistakes, lots of wrong conclusions. I've even pointed out that, originally God, religion, was science, because you didn't have any evidence of nature being capable of doing all this complexity. So, it just seems a rational conclusion when you have absolutely no facts and you're getting killed by diseases and lightning strikes and all kinds of stuff, that maybe there's something out there sending you a message. It seems a perfectly rational deduction if you have no other competing theory. And realistically, they didn't have a competing theory. So they're stuck with it. And, you can sort of see that that's sort of the origins of most of this quantum mechanics and Einstein theory, is just the fact that nobody had developed a good rational theory yet. So they jumped to an irrational one, a silly one. incomplete and just full of problem theory. So anyway, the Bill Gates guy did get back to me, but it was in the same kind of crappy form he got back to me the last time I emailed him a few years ago. And, basically soliciting a conversation or some sort of interaction and instead getting preached at. So, really wasn't worth the trouble. So I did post a response. I guess I can just read this real quick. Hi, Draft. Wasn't aware of you, so don't be offended if I ignored you. Of course, we won't see eye to eye on much, except in everything regarding their theory. But if it tickles your curiosity, I mean, just, I don't think I've ever said that to anybody in my life, but whatever. Here's my prez on your pet peeve. So he's calling the fact that you might find the invention of an ether to be kind of also like a God of the gaps kind of theory that doesn't sound like a system getting simpler when it starts constructing ethers that can do different things, coaxial this and this and this, all these constructs. It's almost like ropes. Anyway, and regarding your amusing, I don't think so. Regarding your amusing mechanism for attraction. So he thinks things moving from high pressure to low pressure is a funny idea. Like how could that possibly work? So I mean, this is just veiled in all kinds of patronizing crap. But whatever. Today I wrote an article in Quora thanks to you. So, which sort of isn't true. His Quora article is just his same routine that there's no push and it has to be ropes. And he's added a drawing of, well, I should go to it because it's kind of funny. I mean, the only thing he added was a new drawing demonstrating, wrong link.
How this worked.
Why is that the wrong link? Oh, the Quora article's down here. Okay, so this is pretty funny. I mean, it's a nothing article. There's just no content in it. Cause of gravity. So here we have a new image of little particles pushing a donkey and little particles pushing a man into a place where there's no particles. Now he's calling this the Casimir effect, which has to do with charge on plates and the vacuum. They speculate that the vacuum somehow puts the charge on, when I think it's kind of obvious what puts the charge on, is the fact that the little individual atoms have a charge already, and whichever side has more positive, that side goes positive. Whatever side has more negative relativity, it goes negative. So it just really is a choice made by the plates. It's not made by any vacuum energy. So anyway, but it has nothing to do with the fact that things move from high pressure to low pressure, just absolutely nothing. But he keeps calling it that. So he calls this the Casimir effect. Being pushed into a low pressure is the Casimir effect. So anyway, but he gives no debunk of why that doesn't actually work. How high pressure moving things into low pressure doesn't create what appears to be attraction, when that's exactly what it does. And of course he has this, tie a rope to everything and then you're okay. Then you can do pull. When, of course, you could go just behind the donkey and give him a little slap on the butt, a little push, and he goes. Anyway, so, but yes, there's very little content here. And absolutely no debunk of any of the presumed to be somehow wrong mechanisms of push. Now, obviously, throwing a baseball at a donkey won't push it, and obviously, I think Einstein's little bowl theory is silly. But clearly, high pressure pushes things into low pressure, not silly. I think that's pretty solid shit. So anyway, so regarding your amusing Casimir mechanism for attraction, so again, just a complete straw man, as if Casimir effect has something to do with things moving from high pressure to low pressure, when it has nothing to do with that. Today, I wrote an article in Quora thanks to you. I'll take no credit. I actually respond to that. But well, anyway, so give yourself a pat on the back for your contribution. So it's just so patronizing. Yeah, fuck you, pretty much. And I basically said to that remark, give yourself a kick in the balls. I should have added for me. Fuck you. What a douche. Yeah. Anyway, just people are just, you just can't shoot them all fast enough. I mean, so twice I have solicited some sort of communication between us. I think we should have conversations about physics because I think I can challenge his ideas. He might attempt to challenge mine. Might be very productive. But no, can't get anywhere. So fuck it. Anyway, so this is a clever comment. Oh, fuckwit. Have you ever agreed with anyone? Well, of course, but usually it works the other way around. Other people agree with me. Because in most cases, I say things better than they say them. So, so I end up being the person that's agreed with because I say it better than they do usually. Jeez. All right, just delete this rubbish. Amazing. Okay, if this is a real revolution, people should be more respectful of this. Well, they don't have to be. They should be respectful of anything, whatever it is, in the sense that they shouldn't diss somebody until that person disses them. Something like that. It's easy to be dismissive, but it is never easy to predict the future. I don't know. Some things are pretty easy to predict. So that all sounds a little bit mushy from my perspective. Now, this comment was just so bizarre. I figure I'll read some of it, but I just should delete it. I mean, it's death threats. I mean, you're fucking dead, kid. I can be anywhere, anytime. I can kill you in over 700 ways. Wow. So he says I insulted him, this hanky. I don't know who does this on the internet. I mean, who types crap like this? It's an amazing. I guess I'll leave it up so you can go look at it. I don't know what video it's on. Someone on to talk physics videos, but just an insane pile of crap. Like somehow, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to take this seriously. And so, as a joke, is it funny? No. So, I mean, there's just nothing here. I have over 300 confirmed kills. So you're going to throw away your Congressional Medal of Honor by becoming a petty murderer? Gee, that makes you seem like quite the imbecile. Or you're going to shoot me with some military issue ballistics? Are you that stupid? One of your old guns? So to make it even easier to catch you? Anyway. You're just so, part of me just keeps saying, Gary, why are you talking to the human race? It's just no point. Humans are just, 99% of them are brain useless, definitely brain disabled, no hope. All right, so, see what else there is. Regarding image board pasta. Very reading image board pasta. I don't know what the fuck that means. Butters. I don't do this. Whatever it is. Smiley phalanges. Not interested. PMSI. I don't really do that either. So if you don't type something better than this, you're dead. One more chance. Emoticons and 4-letter words. Just don't do it for me. So obviously more evidence that the human race needs to be eradicated immediately. I mean, it just looks like it's more and more urgent every day. They're all just, their icons are cartoon characters. They just can't be anywhere close to some kind of adult. Just as dumb as flatworms, pretty much. I mean, I'd probably be better off trying to teach flatworms physics. Fuck. Anyway, See if there's anything else here of interest. So yeah, so that was the link to the video he gave me, was an hour and a half on Ether, which frankly, yeah, it's fine, yeah. But again, I don't scorn the people of history for making colossally stupid assumptions and stuff, because they didn't have any of the information we have. So of course they could draw all kinds of wacky conclusions. There's no excuse for modern man to be like Ken Wheeler, to be talking absolute mush and to say absolutely nothing. No excuse at all. All right, I don't know if there's anything else I had here that was of any interest or importance. Special activity, yeah, I already did that. Slit experiment, yeah, that's an old thing, so I can get rid of this. I've seen that. Pretty much seen that for sure. And so yeah, I think we're done. So let's see what's a suitable leave in the background image. I don't know what this one is. Single slit diffraction, surprised by techno. Okay, that's another one of these idiots doing the fake let's just make two slit math. Okay, so that's the iLecture Online guy. I should just go to my website. That would be a smart thing to do, Gary. You think? I don't know. It's kind of a challenging thing to do. Let's see, what is that? Sorry, I'm just a little bit interested in where I was here, where I have been. God, my eyes. They are not what they need to be. And that's not right. So anyway, yes, we could always do it this way, I suppose. Let's see, website should be on here, right? Draftphysics.com. Yeah. Let's open that. And ooh, I gotta update these icons. I forgot about that. Yeah, it's just so little. People are just of so little interest in things. So here I get the more button. I gotta fix that too. I gotta put this page on the front page. Anyway, so people can find these more interesting drawings. Yeah, it's a good one there, I think. Ping pong ball one. Well, that's really the important drawing. All right. So I was thinking, let's see, I know that I did charge measure to larger charges. Okay, well, I sort of made that charge argument that whenever they measure the charge of something, they're usually measuring it based on its relationship to something that can't move. The surfaces of plates, metal plates or something. They stick a little electron in between. Now, the metal plates can't do anything. They can't be affected by that charge, and the charge is only going to get affected by the metal plates. So it's like measuring my gravity, you know, and measuring my gravity is the same as measuring the gravity of the pen. We both have the same gravity, even though I'm creating more gravity than this pen is, right? I have more gravitational pull than this pen does, but you can't measure that by sticking me between two plates. It won't tell you that. It'll just tell you that I am affected by gravity and the pen is affected by gravity proportionally. But you won't be able to detect by just sticking these things in Earth gravity. It won't tell you that I'm making more gravity than this pen is. All right. Yeah, I won't tell you that. You know. Which is important, which also demonstrates that the force, that there is no superposition. The forces don't combine as in Newton's math. They're not really, the two forces really don't combine to create your gravity. It's not how it works. Yeah. You're just measuring how much the Earth imposes a pull on you, and it does it completely proportional to your mass. So more it removes, okay, proportional to your mass. Don't. Anyway. All right. So yeah, so that's, all of these subjects are a little bit delicate. You got to be kind of careful how you describe what you're describing. And so that's why I sort of want to just, I want to try to do that, make short videos on these individual subjects, trying to say them as concisely and correctly, entirely correctly as possible, which is challenging. All right, let's see if there's any crappy comments. Is this the right video? Yeah, it's the right window. Let's see. I started agreeing with you 1/4 of the way through the first video I seen of yours. Unfortunately, I saw. But anyway, so okay. Well, that's good. But yes, obviously, I have to extend this argument to the professional deceptors. You know what I mean? I have to get to the real propagandists, so I can poke holes in their little fantasy that they will not be unglued from until I thoroughly humiliate them, I think. Yeah, I think that's how it works. Oh, Butters says he's sorry. Okay. It's hard not to forgive Butters. Tough life for poor Butters. All right. So, let's see if there was any other subject for which I had another gravity away. Oh, that sounds like a good one. Let's see. I put it in a little box. That usually means something. Gravity moving away, no effect. Okay, I already did that part. All right. I'm gonna take the garbage out. That doesn't really belong in here. I thought there was something else I just thought of the other day. Well, last night. But it appears to not be on my notes. Let me just check. See, I have a second piece of note paper over here. I don't believe there's anything there. I could have sworn there was something. I said, wow, that's also profoundly interesting to me. But anyway, all right. Okay, so there's some concepts I've been over. So the first one is the push-pull argument. So if I challenge Bill Gates with the question, now, if I don't allow you to tie a rope to things or rubber bands or any other mechanical device, how would you do pull in the mechanical universe? I mean, how exactly would you do pull something? And we know how you do push. You just throw the rocks. So we know you can push things by just throwing something at something and you've pushed it. But how can you possibly pull something if I don't allow you to reach out and grab it in some way, or I don't allow you to fill everything with a medium and then you pull some medium out or something like that, which is also a push. That's just the pressure argument, right? I mean, if I displace the medium, it's going to move with the lower pressure of the medium. So, I mean, it seems to me, I don't know how somebody can argue so belligerently, okay, that somehow pull is the default mechanism when clearly push is the default mechanism. It is the simplest possible. It wins the Occam's razor challenge. Push wins. And I just don't see how a rational person doesn't concede that point, that they have to contrive pull. All right. So that's the first subject, is just get this idea that the universe is getting pushed or pulled. So you're sort of obligated to choose. I guess you can choose both. So you can say yes, I understand the push argument that exists, but there's also a pull element. But then I would ask you to explain, mechanically where that comes from, besides tying ropes to things. Anyway, so that's one avenue to get people to understand that, yes, this is really just about motion's just about pressure. And you're either removing pressure or you're adding pressure. And that's it. And you don't need any ropes to do that. You don't need a medium to do that. You can do it just by hitting things the direction you want them to go. And by removing, pull their chair out and they fall down. Not that hard to do. I can make somebody attract
a new post.
To the earth by just pulling the chair out from under them. It's always some sort of a little annoying. I gotta, there's a little list of things to do before you go online, Gary. Disconnect the phone, nuke the computer. Anyway, all right. So enough on that. So that will be a video, a short video. But each one of these subjects, once you get on them, right, you can just keep taking them a little bit further. All right, so the second argument was the fundamental one about this whole idea of the speed of light, that this misrepresents reality in kind of a catastrophic way. And, at minimum, just for coherency and honesty and some sort of, to give this the word's meaning, accuracy, it should be relabeled the speed of force. Physicists should talk in terms of the speed of force, because we sort of know that the speed is constant for all of the forces. We haven't found a force yet that doesn't involve the speed of light, that isn't moved at that speed. And the real thing to understand, the thing that change makes you realize, is that photons, light, is a force. It's a manifestation of force. And it's perfectly reasonable to think that it moves pretty much the way gravity moves and pretty much how magnetism moves. And and if you understand that photons are clearly a pushing force, that is, no one thinks I shoot the laser and I should have the expectation that something moves towards me. It would be a pushing force. It would move away from me if I shoot enough light at it. Everybody kind of understands that's the way it's going to work. And it just gives you a better foundation for understanding where physics can really go. What's the, what direction seems reasonable once you understand that, okay, light's just one of the forces. All the forces have this thing in common, which means they're probably made of some kind of common thing. Oh, I just throw it in because I just thought of it, because I'm not going to make another Bill Gates video. But he's talking about the double slit experiment, different things, with this stupid rope theory. But I was thinking this rope theory, just how difficult it is, because it's such a bizarrely unintuitive way to look at the universe, that it takes you a while to figure out all the complications. I mean, clearly all the tangling ropes doesn't make any sense. So, but you can't even imagine it because there's too many ropes to keep track of. But you're just, the first thing that comes to your mind is, oh, what a knots everywhere, So, but another thing would be like, he was talking about time in the other video. And in terms of looking at the past, when you look at a star and trying to refine that language, just because it's not quite right. You're not looking at the past, you're looking at an image taken in the past that's taking time to get to your house. So it's like somebody takes a photograph 200 years ago and they give it to the post office, and the post office takes 200 years to deliver it. Yes, it's just an image from the past. You're not looking at the past, but clearly in a way you are, because the stuff in the picture was there. And, but anyway, so it's just semantics, but it's, it's interesting to sometimes pointlessly and futilely play with the words. But anyway, and so he was acknowledging sort of this dilemma of of stuff taking time to get places. So I was thinking about, well, his rope theory, kind of falls apart in an obvious way, that most of the stuff we're looking at in the universe is in different positions right now. They're not in where we're seeing them, and they may have exploded. They made a supernova. So what if one of his little things he's looking at supernova? The light, okay, is still moving along his ropes. Now, the supernova means the atoms scatter all over the fucking place. And so let's even say the ropes don't break. Well, that means they're moving, though. Now they're moving to a different trajectory. So by his theory, somehow the rope speed, that is the speed at which the rope changes its orientation, the line of the rope, okay, the how the rope is pointed, somehow lags the same speed as the speed of light. It has to, because if it goes faster, then the photon would disappear, because the photon is riding on the rope. So it's clearly going the speed of light or slower, the rope catching up to the fact that the object has moved. And so you have this weird two bended lines. The rope goes this way and then it bends this way to the new position. Or is it a curved line? Does the rope curve? Clearly it doesn't do that, because then we'd see the photon curve to a new position. So, it's just an impossible theory in a lot of ways. But anyway, and maybe he just doesn't want to have that tested. And so he'll continue to just engage in safe environments, controllable environments. All right. So the idea of connecting all the other forces to the function of light, the fact that they all are doing, like I said, they have to be unified just by the fact that they all do carry this same speed. There'd be no reason for them if they were fundamentally different things. If bent space was different than magnetism and all this other stuff, fundamentally different, why would it have exactly the same speed? It just, logically it says, come on, that's got to be the wrong starting point. And again, we're talking about theories that are very weakly evidenced. So there's very little reason to cling to this notion that light is fundamentally different from magnetism, or fundamentally different from the forces holding atoms together, or fundamentally different from gravity, when fundamentally they have something so obvious in common. So anyway, I won't go through the whole history of how light got its place, but obviously it's just a circumstance where we can see light, we can sense it. We don't have gravity sensors, we don't have magnetism sensors. So clearly we were focused on this light thing because it's the only one that affects us personally, in a personal way. And therefore we just said that's the center of the universe and everything else is some periphery. When the fact is that no, the universe, the speed of force is the mechanism, and light is just one of them. And we've given it a huge prejudice in our attention, merely circumstantially, because it interacts with us personally. The radio waves go right through me, right? A lot of stuff goes right. Who cares? Nobody pays any attention. But we know it's there, and we know it's functioning the same way. So to have a more accurate perception of the universe, you should be thinking in terms of the speed of force. Okay. Motion trap. That's a good subject. Well, let's see if there's any comments worth reading. All right. I disagree. Fine. And find that your theory has seriously diverged from what it was in 2014. You can't say anything. That doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, it's absolutely useless gibberish. I mean, how does this mean anything? So clearly, the original theory was Lesage gravity, essentially, because I hadn't dealt with all of the problems. I hadn't done any of that stuff. I just basically came to the same conclusion Lesage did without ever hearing of it. And, then I migrated it through these observations about how this is about force. It's not about light. And that got me to magnetism and then polarization. And that got me to realize that magnets are filtering force. They're not creating force. The lack of energy proves it, just like gravity. the lack of energy in Einstein's equation. There's no energy. Nothing, the Earth doesn't consume energy, the sun doesn't consume energy, and yet it's producing gravity. So somehow it's burning an engine. The Earth is, if I had to build the flame, I said this in the other video, if we actually had to take rockets to move the Earth into its orbit, you'd see it. You'd see how much you'd get there. And yeah, I sent you the bill, the energy bill. Yeah, then you'd get some notion that this doesn't happen for free. You can't just move an Earth for free. There has to be an energy source. And the two magnets move into each other. That's real movement. If you had to do it, you'd have to put little rockets on the magnet and burn oil or burn fuel to move the magnets into each other. So these things have no mechanism. And you're saying, well, that's just so obvious that the magnet isn't producing the energy. So when I see the magnets move together, I have to assume something else is doing it, because the magnets themselves don't have any hydrogen. They don't have any gasoline. They don't have any wound up springs. They don't have any storage capacity. They can't store energy, and they don't use any of it. If they did store energy, it's obvious they're not using any of it. They don't lose mass over time doing magnetism, where clearly an isotope, a radioactive isotope, is clearly creating radiation, and it's clearly getting lighter. Okay, it's real energy it's producing, and it's real in the sense that they have to pay for it. The isotope pays for it. And this is the obvious stuff. So yes, everything I've done since 2014 has only improved this theory by millions of percentage points. So your comment is of no value. Stop philosophizing. What philosophy was in any of this? I'm sorry. The fact that plus and minus are mislabeled is not a scientific subject. It's not philosophy, idiot. The fact that things should be correctly labeled is not philosophy. Oh, Jesus. Switch top chat to live chat. No. Whatever that is, fuck you. This chat is fine. Whatever top chat is. I don't even know what, what's the difference? All messages are visible. Well, why would I want all messages visible when all they're doing is taking spam out? Some messages, such as potential skip spam, may not be visible. Why should I take that off? I mean, if I make it live chat, can you post links? Well, we'll see if that works. Can you post links now? See if somebody can post a link. All right, anyway. So, yeah, I'll grant your request. Insult you first, but then I'll grant it. But why doesn't the Earth burn up then? Burn up from what? What are you talking about? They have ropes. What does that even mean, Milton? I mean, yeah, God damn it. You really say this stuff in your head and you say, this will make perfectly good sense to anybody I say this to. But why doesn't the Earth burn up then? Why would the Earth burn up? What are you talking about? Burn up from what? What would cause the Earth to burn up? What have I suggested indicates that I've poured gasoline on the Earth and threw a match on it? Now the Earth's going to burn up. Where did I suggest those events? It's hit by all those bits. Oh, so you're too stupid to pay any attention to the argument that's been made. It's all kinetic. When you bounce those kinetic balls off each other, the Newton's cradle, or whoever's it was, do you worry that they're going to melt? No, you really don't, because it's a kinetic. And you understand in space, there's no atmosphere to heat up. There's none of that stuff. So there's no little bits flying off. There's no extra energy created at all. It's an absorption of the energy. When the space shuttle pushes you, you don't burn up, do you? You accelerate. The force goes into you. Not fire. Stupid fuck. Oh, all right. You said it needs all those engines. I said if you were going to replace the motion, if you had to make the Earth move, right? And you couldn't use the gravity geometry, and you actually had to replace it with a real piece of energy, you'd have to build some sort of device, right? A big giant catapult, or you'd have to make something that could impose force on the Earth. Now, one of the choices is a rocket engine. There's other choices. You could, maybe, and when the moon's in the right position, you could stand on the moon and throw rocks at the Earth. But it'd be a lot of rocks, fuckhead. Anyway, yep, I can post a link now. Well, you didn't prove it, but okay, good. Yeah, so that's good. Sometimes links are valuable. Actually, if you increase the rate, you will be worried about. Actually, if you increase the rate, you will be worried about it. Again, they're not, you're an idiot. Okay, I don't know how to explain to you, but nuclear physics doesn't have friction in it, retard. There's no mechanism to create these little bits flying off and shards and all that crap. It's kinetic. It's complete. The interactions are complete. One thing hits this thing hits this, all this forward energy goes into this moves this way, this moves this way. You don't understand what a reflection is and that there's no losses in a kinetic reflection. And you're a little too stupid for this conversation, a little bit too arrogant for how dumb you are. You can heat water by stirring it. Again, and what does this have to do with water? Is stirring water a nuclear reaction? Is stirring water directly moving electrons and protons, or is it moving the atoms locked in bonds with each other, and it's ripping those bonds to pieces, actually? So, of course, it's creating heat because little bits are flying off. The gravity is a nuclear force. It affects every single little subatomic particle. That's why the pen and the human being fall at exactly the same rate. It's because the gravity is each little bit. And that's why the velocity of the pen has to be the same as the Earth when it's in orbit. To have this pen in orbit, it has to move at exactly the same speed as the Earth. So does every subatomic particle. Shit for brain. Oh, God damn, these assholes. All right. So anti-gravity exists within the Earth's core. No, the Earth's core is under extreme pressure. So if you want to say anti-gravity in the sense that there's no gravity, yes, there's no gravity, but guess what? There's 10 million pounds per square inch of chemical pressure. So the gravity has essentially been turned into the movement of atoms, the movement of electrons and protons. They're moving towards the center. And so, yes, if you can create some sort of bubble that protects you from that pressure, then yes, you could sit in the center of the Earth and there's no gravity. But good luck with that. They can't even go to the bottom of the ocean without getting crushed, let alone go to the center of the Earth. It's even, the pressure is even more extreme down there. Oh, idiots. Rocket engines have a fair charge of blow up. What does this have to do with anything? Engines don't work reliably. Well, they do nowadays, idiot. I mean, yes, refrigerators used to break a week after you bought one, and now they last for 30 years. The world changes, silly person. Ropes make sure nothing blows up. Whatever, fine. I'm just saying a rope from every atom to every other atom in the universe is, on its face, a silly, made-up pile of crap. I mean, it's just infrastructure that's more complex than the things riding on it. So it's like building the longest, the biggest, hugest train tracks, go across the country, right? Build a train track all the way across the country and then roll cherries down it. I mean, it's idiotic. Actually, the energy of a photon is E equals PC. There's, the energy, every photon is exactly the same energy. All you can do is have more of them, ultraviolet light, or less of them, infrared light, because they're further apart. So, fuck you again. Oh, just keep arrogantly spouting your crap. Yeah. Okay, so change of momentum necessary changes energy. Well, again, so if you think photons are varying their energy level, the individual photons, because they're part of an infrared stream or because they're part of an ultraviolet stream. I'm just saying, you've been duped, silly person. If you think a bullet changes shape because I fire 4 in 1 second, you're an idiot. The bullet's exactly the same bullet. It has exactly the same capacity to do damage. It doesn't matter to the bullet how fast I fire the gun. But clearly, the effect on the target's going to be different. You can't understand that? I mean, I've already been over all these arguments. That's why I'm being a little bit dismissive. Clearly, this person hasn't watched any of my videos, really doesn't give a fuck. He just wants to keep spouting the propaganda as if I can't answer it when I've already answered it 4,000 times. All right, so in a sense, there is friction at the atomic level. There's no friction, so I don't know what you're talking about. You don't call it friction when two kinetic balls hit each other and they bounce off this way. Nobody calls that. Look at the example of friction. That's not what they call that. And clearly, subatomic particles bouncing off of each other don't have any friction issues. So, you know, just keep lying. That's all this is now. It's just lies. Didn't you say, stop it, I'm busy. Didn't you say your bits are absorbed by the earth? Yes, absorbed means they're caught. They're trapped in circles or they're trapped in going back and forth, but their momentum has been stopped from going somewhere else. So the little moving fish goes into the school of fish and it has momentum in a direction and it helps drag the big giant school. But the big giant school goes much slower than the little fish was going. And so the little fish doesn't get over here and hit this fucker over here. So this fucker doesn't get hit, and so it moves into the low pressure. Not very complicated. Absorption is very different than friction. Two completely different words. Fuckhead. All right, an absorption of bits means an absorption of energy, even if it's kinetic. Well, exactly. The Earth wouldn't move towards the sun if it didn't absorb the energy. That's the whole fucking point. It's absorbing the momentum of the external cosmic background radiation style energy that's in the universe. And it's absorbing it, and that's why it's moving. Just like when the well, I don't want to keep using the shuttle example, but just like when the shuttle flame comes out of the back end of the shuttle, you're absorbing the equal but opposite reaction, which is essentially another flame. A big pile of energy is what you're absorbing. Dumb fuck. All right, an absorption of bits means an absorption of energy, even if it's kinetic. Oh, I've already answered that, and he got rid of his next comment. So, probably a useless distraction, because again, I've gone over all this crap many times, many times. All right, so speed of force. So the trap part, so that would be another video, is just explaining this whole concept of absorption, the fact that something goes in and it doesn't come out. Okay, it doesn't come out the front end somewhere. So energy goes in going this way. It goes in and doesn't come out. And that momentum is real. It's a real thing. And it's been captured, that movement. And while it's in the thing, it's still doing its moving thing, but its movement's being spread over the entire mass of the object. So one photon compared to almost anything is a tiny amount of energy. So if I hit this with one photon, the one photon will take a very long time to move all of these other bits by the energy tying them together, the tension, and move it 1 photon's worth of energy. Yeah, you're not going to see much. But the real point is that's what the photon's doing. It's staying inside, and now the photon doesn't get where it was going. So at the speed of light, the photon hits the object. It's not moving the speed of light anymore because it's inside this object. And now it doesn't hit where it was going. And that's just so obvious. You can't get that. You know, that's absorption. So the motion trap is basically just the idea that you can trap motion in so many ways, but it all comes down to some sort of circular thing. Something goes in and it gets trapped. So it can be a round trap, It could be just a square trap, you know, 4 90-degree turns and you're back where you started. It can be a triangular trap, or it can be an up and down line. It's essentially a trap. It goes in here, just gets stuck, comes back, goes back, go back, 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 back. So lots of ways to trap energy. Let's see. You spend all this time explaining that it's kinetic. Yeah, it's just a word to say there's no little bits fly off. Photons aren't little things, little pieces of glass, and little pieces of glass fly off of them and all that kind of stuff. They're purely kinetic. They exchange entirely their energy. There's no losses. That's what the word is for, shithead. Oh, Jesus. So it doesn't have the heat absorption problem. But then you say the energy is absorbed. The energy of its movement, you dumb fuck. Two things hit each other, right? And they're different. Now, if there's two things that are the same, you can't tell that they did this, right? Can't tell. Who knows anything happened? Because all you have is one thing going away and one thing going away. But if they're different, you can see the reflection. This is fundamentally changed. This is fundamentally changed by the interaction. And the interaction costs nothing. There's no any other significance besides the fact that these two objects exchanged their direction. Fucking A. But then you say the energy is absorbed even if you throw a ball up. Okay, what does that even mean? What how can I make that make any sense? Where did I say the energy absorbed even if you throw a ball up? What are you talking about? I've clearly pointed out photons can't have two momentums. So you can't throw a photon up and have it go forward at the same time. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Where gravity should momentarily cancel the energy. Gravity should, more bullshit. Where gravity should momentarily cancel the energy as it fires up less, not increase it. What does that even mean? Sorry, that makes absolutely no sense. The gravity has a bunch of stored energy. It's in the Earth right now. The Earth is hot. Guess what? You know why the Earth is hot? You know why the core of the Earth is molten? It's because of the gravity. And I would argue that every planet has a molten core because of the pressure, idiot. There's a ton of pressure. That's stored energy. So there's energy that isn't in the universe, if you get my drift, because it's in the Earth. So if the pressure is in the Earth, that means it's not in the field. And that means that's why there's gravity. Jesus, idiot. All right. I mean, how could this mean anything to somebody? Where gravity should momentarily cancel the energy as it fires up less, not increase it. Yeah, like that makes sense. Yeah, if you throw a ball, the energy still increases, I guess. Where is that energy going? So, I mean, again, what are you talking about? You have to act on it with a force. So once the ball's in motion, the ball doesn't slow down till you act on it with a force. You don't get that part either? What should the small icy rocky? What about the small icy rocky? That's on the surface. Do you understand the difference between surfaces and cores? The core of the Earth is molten, but yet the crust on the Earth here, I'm sitting here, there's no molten here. Now in Hawaii, they got a bunch of molten coming out. But generally speaking, the median temperature of the surface of the Earth is whatever, 78 degrees or something. It's quite nice. No 2,000 degrees. If I throw a ball up, its kinetic energy will keep increasing. How so? Once you're done accelerating it, you're not giving it any more energy. And look, this isn't about kinetic. It's about once you're releasing something. There's two forms. You know, there's two uses of the word. You know, the potential and kinetic. The only use of the word I care for this kinetic purpose is for the understanding that the interactions are not elastic, unelastic. The interactions are not unelastic. They say their cores are solid and cold. Who says that? I haven't heard that anywhere. So you got a reference, got a link? I'm saying that's fundamentally silly because they're doing exactly what the Earth is doing, which is getting pressurized. Pressure creates heat. There's kind of no way to avoid that. It's absorbing those bits all the time. It's absorbing what bits all the time? Is this, what are you using the drag argument? I've already done the drag stuff. So if this is about the drag argument, that's probably a little more too complex for this fucking open room, but I've done videos on it and explained how you have to have a mechanism. Electrons don't have perpetual motion. If I throw an electron in empty space, it stops moving really quickly. Same with a proton, it just won't keep going. So unless I create an anode and a cathode, an electric field to keep pushing it, it will stop moving. But yet, solid matter keeps moving. So you have to explain the difference between those two things. So I could ask you, why do electrons stop moving? Why you try to argue there's no heat problem all the time? Because we know what heat is. Heat is fragments of something. Okay, that's how heat's created in atoms, is fundamentally, its expression is going to be in the form of radiation. And that's how it'd be transmitted. So it's vibrations between the atoms, which is motion. But those vibrations, to mean anything, have to travel through another medium of, that transmits the vibrations. Or it can be transmitted because the little fragments are flying off, the little photons, energy. It's losing energy. So you increase the amount of motion, that's increasing the energy, but to balance the mechanism will just radiate that extra energy to try to maintain its equalization, its tranquility, whatever the right word would be. But again, so you don't understand, the nuclear level doesn't have sparks. The nuclear level doesn't have mediums. The nuclear level doesn't have all of this bullshit. So there's no mechanism, even if they were creating something called heat or vibration, there's no medium to transmit it. So it stays inside of them. So vibrations and heat that can't go anywhere, in my opinion, are moot subjects. Don't you try to argue that there's no heat problem all the time? And heat problem for who? For what? Where? Why would there be a heat problem? I'm not splitting atoms in two here. There's no need for a heat problem. The energy of an object is equal to the sum of the interactions it experiences. Well, sort of, duh. But again, the word energy doesn't mean too much, so it's not a very specific word. The point is, you can collect motion, you collect pressure, just like the Earth has collected it. The interactions it experiences along its path. It's an operator that translates the object from A to B. Well, that doesn't say anything, sorry. It says absolutely nothing about this subject. Fact is, I can add energy in lots of ways. I can add electrons, which add pressure between the electrons by putting more electrons in there, and they got ping pong balls bouncing between them. The pressure between the ping pong balls bounces more pressure. So I can add electrons, I can add ping pong balls. I can do lots of things to increase the energy of a system. Look, the point is it absorbs energy, okay, by these simple interactions. This is the kinetic part, okay? Something's going one way, now it's going another way. And I gave you the example. So let's say the reflection does this, okay? The thing reflects at 90 degrees. And then I reflect it again at 90 degrees. And I reflect it again at 90 degrees. And I reflect it again at 90 degrees. Do you get it? It's now trapped. It can't get out of the system. Do you understand that? that the energy, the thing was a piece of bit moving through the universe. It's no longer moving through the universe. It's doing this. It's stuck in one place, essentially, in one small little tiny location. That's stored energy. So I'll write that down because that's really what the trap is. Stored energy. It's captured energy. Jesus. I don't need to look anything up, shithead. Your silly vacuous definition doesn't say anything. I said that as clear as I can say. It doesn't say anything. The use of the word energy is almost, like I said, that's like a surgeon using a butcher's knife. It can't be applicable to any detailed explanation of anything. All right, look it up. They contain rocky silicate cores with exotic ice. Again, says you. And look, those are the moons of planets. They've never. We don't know even what's inside of the Earth. How do you think we know what's inside of Jupiter? Okay, now the small bodies. Okay, they're not creating enough gravity to create high pressure. So yeah, obviously they're not liquid. I'm not suggesting that every asteroid is molten in the middle. Okay, but the whole point is that's essentially what gravity does. Gravity is pressure. You don't get that part. That right now, that if you were 10 feet down and you had to hold up the roof, you'd recognize, oh, there's a lot of weight above me. Well, what's that weight represent? It represents pressure in the direction of the core. And then why don't you look up the relationship between pressure and heat? Now, it could be possible that you could have some mechanism where there's no heat and just pressure, like some sort of super cooled whatever, blah, blah. But I don't think any of the planets have that. Whore ass fuck. I don't know what that is, but I guess I could just say fuck ass whore. Yeah. So that's my advice to you. Fuck ass whore. Think of a computer program. No, fuck you. Sending instructions to a bit. So that makes sense. Yeah. You mean a memory location? Can't send instructions to a bit. The bits are the instructions. The instructions are those instructions. The interactions are those instructions. Sorry, it still doesn't mean anything to me. How is that supposed to mean something to me? I just explained that photons go into atoms or other things, and essentially they're being stored inside of the atom. Now, you think they're converted into what? Fat electrons or something? You think they're converted into Swiss cheese, and then later on, the photon will be released because they'll melt the Swiss cheese and turn it back into a photon. I'm basically just arguing, no, the energy goes in, and it gets trapped inside of the atom, and it just stays in these little cul-de-sacs until something changes to allow it to be released. But that's all that happens. It goes in, it just goes around, or back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Regardless, it gets trapped until some point where the trap is broken. And your counter argument is this: you can't say that. Yeah, I can say that. Every piece of experimental evidence indicates is consistent with that. There's no evidence that, no, photons can't be trapped inside of atoms. Yes, they can. All right. Well, fair enough. I like your need for a machine to take care of drag. Yes, well, it's not to take care of drag, it's to explain inertia. And let's understand, physics provides no explanation. So when I move this pen, and I have a stationary pen, if I had the two pens, conventional physics, right? One's moving and one's stationary. Conventional physics will give you no explanation for how those two pens are different. They'll basically say they're identical. Where I'm arguing, no, they're not identical. One was accelerated, which means a bunch of force went into it and got trapped. One of them's full of potential energy, and the potential energy is in a physical form, not in a vaporous, magical form. It's in a real form. That means real changes take place to the moving pen, and those changes are what keeps it moving. So when you get a theory of inertia, then you can tell me the drag problem. Because it's really not a drag problem until you demonstrate how the two pens are different, how you explain how they're different. All right. I also like the need to accept dualism for energy conservation, or whatever that is. Yeah, no, I don't accept any dualism, so fuck that too. Fuck these garbage paraphrases of what I'm saying. Geez, all this pushing business is all too complicated for me. Yeah, I hope that's a joke because, frankly, the pulls are the thing that's complicated in the real world. Why don't you give me an illustration of a pull that doesn't have ropes tied to something? So without ropes, why don't you give me a demonstration of a pull that has a mechanism, a mechanical mechanism that does pull? You're being closed-minded. No, I'm being reasoned, and you're unreasonable. Reasoned people don't think 2 + 2 = 3, right? So he's saying I'm being, you're closed-minded. You think it equals 4. Yeah, that's right. Yes. It's a very good, logical reasons to believe so. The theory behind it's very solid, completely consistent with everything we know about numbers, that 2 + 2 = 4. I have absolutely no reason to doubt it. And I have absolutely no reason to doubt that forces are real things, not bent this and Heisenberg wavy, I don't know where I am, quantum leaping stuff. I have every reason to think the physical universe is physical, that photons do actually travel from point A to point B in a dead straight line at a dead constant speed, and they never do anything else. I have every reason to believe that, and absolutely no reason to believe you're gobbledygook. That's founded on a bunch of very strangled experiments. The Eddington experiment. You got Einstein on the headlines of the New York Times. Einstein proven right by an experiment that's incredibly complicated and weak and theoretically silly. Yeah, and never been repeated. Even though last year we had a perfect eclipse over the greatest technology on planet Earth, some of the most technically advanced observatories on planet Earth. The eclipse went right over the top of them, and they didn't repeat the experiment. Kind of, laughably silly. Well, if you say toroidal vortices here, you're just going to get blocked. So I'll just let you know. Okay, there's no toroids anywhere. You're just so full of shit. And there's no vortice. Okay, you have a vector. Okay, there's no vortices. Where do you get that from? A vortice requires you to keep changing the direction of something. If you're changing its direction, that means it has to be influenced by something. What's influencing something? Nothing can do a vortice, okay, on its own. It's impossible. You can't throw a baseball. The vortice pitch, you can't do that. It's impossible. All right, without wind machines or some other mechanism to keep adding energy, to keep changing directions. So there's no fucking vortices anywhere. There's vectors. I mean, to even use the word photon and vortice in the same sentence is just so fucking, there are crimes that you should do 10 years in jail for, and that might be worth 10 years. I mean, it's disgusting. Photons in a vortice. Fuck. The magic photon can do something the highly paid $10 million a year baseball pitcher, he can't do it, but the photon can do it. Hopeless imbeciles. All right. So we got speed of force, push versus pull, motion trap, which is the absorption of energy. And I guess it's worth pointing out to do a little video on this difference between effects. which is mostly the mathematics, and causes. That the two things are two different things you're describing. One thing, you're describing what happens when you put two things together, like hydrogen and oxygen, and a little bit of pressure. Boom. And why it happens. You know, why versus what. And so, yes, mathematics is very good at the what. It's very bad at the why. So it'll tell you that you mix the ingredients, put it in the oven, and it makes a cake. But it won't tell you why, you know, the oil and the water don't mix. It won't tell you why the, you know, some sort of baking powder mixes with something else, and the yeast is farting out gases, and it's creating bubbles, and the bubbles, you know, are creating air pockets in the cooking bread or something. So it doesn't explain the causes. It just explains the effect. It just formalizes the effect. And that's all it is. It's just a shallow formalization. Okay. It's a straight tie, white shirt, a little rigid jacket on. It's giving you just the portrait, basic shape. That's it. It's not, mathematics is not a model. Anyway. And so, yeah, it really, and I would argue that physics should be mostly about causes. The effects are always kind of obvious. I mean, the effects are easy. Causes is hard. Causes is the real game. And it's these, you know, in my opinion, big cop-out, wimpy physicists who sit there and obsess about effects when the real game of physics is causes. And they've just accepted a bunch of silly God-of-the-gap causes. Jehovah did it. No point in thinking anymore because we already have the answer. God did it. And God works in mysterious ways. So that's why everything's fucked up, is because God's a little bit silly. There you go. We're done. No, we're not done. A pull mechanism is a complicated solution. I'd say it's an impossible solution. The pull will have a push in it, unless you tie a rope on it. So I'm just saying, unless you come up with some kind of bizarre physical infrastructure, if you just use bouncing things and hitting things, things that move, you can't make a pull. It's impossible. It'll always just be a push you've disguised. Okay, there'll be a push in it. The push is the real mechanism, or pushing an object into another. The pull mechanism is a complicated solution for pushing one object into another. Exactly. So push is just a fake word. Pull is a fake word unless you create, you know, by some God mechanism, an arm that grabs. You know, so if we say the elemental nature of the universe is it's arms that grab, you know, and it's just a bunch of arms grabbing stuff. Okay, but that isn't, in my opinion, a reasonable way to do the Occam razors. It should get simpler all the way down, not more complicated all the way down. The small universe hasn't got more moving parts than the big universe. So again, it's like building a train track across the United States and then just rolling cherries down it. Silly. All right, so what else? Okay, then the big one is filter. So a force filter. I have to Google that and see if anybody's ever said that before. A force filter. And that's really how the whole universe functions. The electron is a force filter, the proton is a force filter, and obviously the magnet is a force filter. It's not making a force, it's not creating a force, it's merely filtering a force. And by filtering it, segregating the tall soldiers from the short soldiers, you know, the ones with, you know, by segregation, you can make your army more powerful. You can have it have more effect. So by taking and by shooting the, say if you had something that just went back and forth. Okay, so you have piece A that goes this way, and you have piece B that goes this way, and so they're all jittering, but they're jittering at a different phase. So one jitters back and forth, you know. You get my drift, on a different phase. So when the one group is going this way, the other group is going this way. Now, if you could segregate that, and so then you just had all this motion, or you had all this motion. Clearly, now you can understand how that would be a lot more energy than this. This looks like nothing, where this is a million times more energetic. And so that's the power of a filter. And that's where the magnetism gets its meaning. And the ironic thing is here we have this word magnetism, like it's magnifying something, even though it doesn't come from the word magnification. You know, it has nothing to do with magnification. But clearly that's what it's doing. It's a tool for magnifying the force of gravity by segregating its yin and yang. By separating the yin and yang, you make for a very powerful expression of energy. Yeah, that was a pretty good. So those are the basic ideas. Those basic themes underlie everything in physics. That's the whole game. It's recognizing this is just about momentum and speed of this force stuff, and the fact that it's pushing the matter bits. The matter bits are absorbing it. So I shouldn't say pushing, but it's absorbing it, which is the same thing as pushing. But anyway, for the sake of argument. Obviously, there's no push and pull in the universe at all. There's just absorption or not absorption. There's impact or no impact. And such. And so forth and whatnot. So I think I've covered everything I need to cover. So we'll see if the commenters can do anything interesting, and if not, I will move on with my day. I think so. So at least I got something out of this. The recognition that the trap, I have to emphasize the point that the trap is storing energy because it's capturing energy. It's taking energy out of the environment and putting it into the little atom bits. And that's all there really is. There's energy being consolidated, and that's what the Earth is. The Earth is full of energy, right? We have all this negative pressure. If tomorrow I took away the gravity, right, you could sort of understand that the intense pressure in the core of the Earth would blow everything out. Everything would go flying out. It's a coiled spring. The Earth is a coiled spring. It's not a tennis ball full of, well, in a sense, that's what it sort of is. If it's not made the way a tennis ball is, but that's what it is. I mean, it's captured pressure. All right. So to get this straight, the Earth absorbed trapping bits. The Earth, any piece of matter. The whole point is again, as I pointed out, this thing is doing the same thing I'm doing. The atoms are doing it. If I was in orbit right now, going around the Earth, and I took one atom of mine and placed it out there, it would have to travel exactly the same velocity I do, not to be falling into the Earth. So clearly, it's the nuclear bits affected by gravity, not the mass. I'm not being moved. My mass isn't being moved. My atoms are being moved. And more importantly, the electrons and the protons are being moved. All right. Let's see. Let's see. No, they're not known vortices. Why don't you do any experiments, Mr. Nobel Prize Zone? I have done experiments. And in those experiments, I demonstrate how interferometer is a doubtful science. And certainly a half-silver mirror as a beam splitter is absolute silly nonsense. So I've demonstrated that as a fact. Okay, that all you're doing is creating two different beams of light, not two same beams of light. One beam diverges the whole trip. The other beam only diverges at the last bit. So clearly two fundamentally different things. So I have done experiments. I have demonstrated flaws in your assumptions of your conventional physics. I mean, there are experiments. You want to sit there and say, so this idiot thinks because the laser's on my porch, it's not a laser beam. Because a piece of glass has moisture on it, it's not a glass slide with moisture on it because it's on my porch. It'd be the same exact results inside a lab. I mean, you're just fooling yourself to think there's any different, shithead. All right, well, I'll block you. Fuck it. It's just useless crap. I mean, if you have to resort to arguments that somehow I can't do the 2-slit experiment on my porch, it's just idiotic. Of course I can. Absolutely nothing wrong with the lasers you can buy. Very nice lasers. I mean, they do the job. Just amazingly pitiful arguments. Cowboy, no doubt. The psychotic fucking cowboy. Let's just note this for posterity. This psychopath. YouTube just lets psychopaths loose. They just let them to keep making. He makes like sock account every fucking day. And YouTube does nothing to stop them. I can't make a channel right now. I can't create a new channel because I don't have enough phone numbers for YouTube to verify who I am. So I can't make a channel where I produce videos. But these assholes can somehow make channels where they just make sock accounts for the purpose of spamming comment sections. Why does YouTube let people do that? Because there's money in it? What possible reason is there for this nonsense? Why wouldn't anybody who's running a company who's rational say, why would I let these terrorists and malicious people run around free? That would be idiotic. Why should I let them just harass people incessantly? That's stupid. No, it's just a world where we've given the more of an asshole you are, the more forgiven you are. So the whole Twinkie defense thing, somehow these complete assholes are I drop a cigarette butt in a public park, and they'll pillory me and then throw me in prison for 10 years, right? Where these fucking assholes can behave like terrorists, that's okay. No big deal. Our civilization has been degraded by the idiocracy, clearly. The liars and the idiots are a huge voting bloc, and they have no interest in civilization. And if the smart people don't start growing a clue and fighting back, it's just going to get worse. Do you think you could apply for a research grant to demonstrate your theory to a scientific institution so that the physicist will listen to you? Well, frankly, a lot of this stuff isn't going to get demonstrated. If it was easy to prove, then Newton would have done it, right? It's obviously not going to be easily proven. And Einstein didn't even prove any of his theories, right? I mean, the Eddington experiment is shit. The galactic lensing makes absolutely no sense. So having this conversation, come on. Jesus Christ. Having this conversation in that context is, stupid. Like somehow this is going to be proven. The only thing I can do is give you two theories. Okay, their theory, there's no continuity between the speeds. Every bent space moves the same speed as a photon. Does that make any sense to you? Bent space moves the same speed as photons. Does that make any sense to you? I mean, bent space doesn't have anything to do with moving forces. It's not even called a force. It's some sort of bent geometry. How come the geometry moves exactly the same speed as the photons and magnetism and all this other stuff? So all I can do is make rational arguments to you explaining how their theory has no evidence. Okay, none of relativity is proven. There's no evidence that laser beams point forward when you have velocity. So you start moving, all of a sudden you can't shoot your laser beam perpendicular anymore. It always goes forward. So no matter what you do, the beam goes forward. Has that been proven by Einstein? No, it hasn't. So you're saying I have to make a counter proof. Why do I have to make a counter proof beyond saying, prove your nonsense? I mean, fuck this. I'm in an argument about what's a reasonable approximation, because that's all we can do is reasonably approximate the truth. Because we're never going to see a photon. We're never going to see a lot of things. We're never going to move half the speed of light. None of this shit's ever going to happen. All right. So it's just about what's a reasonable explanation, what's an unreasonable explanation. It's just comparing two theories and saying which one has substance. I'm saying, in my opinion, it's clear. My theory is evolution. Your theory is God. Okay, you got dark matter, you got Heisenberg, you got Huygens, and you got bent space. None of it ever proven. Not a shred of evidence really indicating any of it's the truth. And they're all magical forces, completely beyond testing. All right. Hey, Gary, and the idea of me getting a research grant, what do you think the odds are of that? I mean, I have to find some foundation that wants to give money away to somebody and persuade them that I'm worth it. You know, but I'm not a college. I'm not an institution. They're not going to, oh, you gave money to Gary. And, you know, I'm not even a likable character. What do you think the odds are of me getting a research grant, fuckhead? Hey, Gary, the usual diagram of gravity bending space is a sphere above a temporal surface being bent down like a funnel. Yes, which is absolute nonsense, right? So I'm not even arguing that silly explanation. I'm arguing Stanford University professor, whatever the fuck his name is. I don't know why I can never remember his name. Leonard Susskind, who describes it as a perpetual stream. So there's a drain that pulls, and there's a source of fluid that keeps replacing the missing fluid. So that's what he explains it as. That's the metaphor he uses. But yes, clearly in 3 dimensions, this shit doesn't make any sense at all. It's just a vacuum cleaner. We're just supposed to believe that there's something in the middle of everything that's pulling away space, and somehow everything in space knows that space is missing. The nothing is missing. I must jump into the vacuum of the nothing, the double vacuum. So instead of just a vacuum existing, a double vacuum exists. So I must be moving towards the low pressure. It's a silly argument. All right. I remember you talked about this. Yes. Would the funnel shape not be bending into the center of the sphere? Well, of course, that's exactly where it's bending into, the center of the sphere. And it's using gravity to explain gravity. Look, everything goes down into the funnel by the magical gravity that the funnel's supposed to be explaining, not illustrating. Again, not even close to recognizing the obligation here is to explain cause, not to evade the subject of cause, not to say it's caused by the causes. All right, the bent space theory is essentially just saying it's caused by the causer. That's all it is. It's a God theory. I remember you said the photon would take the same amount of total time because it takes longer time forward and less time back. So it cycles out. So now you're talking about the interferometer. No, the problem with the interferometer is the fact that the divergence is created by the internal reflections of the medium you're using for a beam splitter. So, you know, we've already done this. Back and forth shit is nonsense. Light always travels the same speed. And as you move it, the distances are always going to compensate for each other. So it's just a bullshit argument. You can't make photons out of phase by doing this. This will not make photons out of phase. But you retracted that. I think you still agree with the refraction, right? I don't agree with anything. The whole stupid argument that this stupid device could detect ether was a dumb fucking premise from the very start. And the fact is, I've demonstrated that it can't do it for more than one reason. It can't do it because the idea of a beam splitter is fuck-tarded. All right. What's the difference between dark matter and dark energy? Well, obviously one's a push and one's a pull. One's making space and one's consuming space, blah, 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 however you want to look at it. One's creating gravity, one's making space. So kind of different. They have really nothing in common. They have nothing to do with each other. One's a localized phenomenon that just has to do with creating a mechanism in an environment to cause effects. The other is something the entire universe is supposed to be doing, which is making fake energy out of nothing. I mean, all these experiments are just hugely flawed. I mean, the whole interferometer presumption, okay, that this photon hits the mirror, the whole idiotic notion that, here, I'll move this, and the photon is still going to go to the mirror, even though I'm moving the mirror forward. I mean, it's even in there. I mean, this relativity nonsense that photons go forward is everywhere and is stupid. I don't know if he was Stephen Hawking wasn't obsessed with black holes. He was obsessed with physics, and physics is obsessed with black holes. Quite often, he was a cosmologist. He wasn't a cosmetologist or whatever the fuck it is. He wasn't a, in my opinion, clearly his obsession wasn't stuff like quantum. The small universe wasn't his field. His field was the big universe. But the only universe that exists is a small one, so he obviously made a poor choice. So anyway, I guess it's time to go get some work done and whatnot. More productive work. Sorry, no offense. Let's see if there's anything last. I don't know if any of your comments are actually on the subjects I brought up. Push versus pull. The motion trap. Well, sort of, a little bit. Speed of force. You didn't really even acknowledge that one. And the force filter. That's the big one. A big tard and such. I don't know what that is. Eminem eats ass and such. Yeah, that's really brilliant. God, how creative. Not. Yeah, Trump rules. Exactly. Idiocracy. So anyway, till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot.